Hello and welcome back to the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Examined. I'm your host, John Malanka, and thank you for tuning in to watch episode 4, Treating Cancer Part 2. But before we dig into this episode, I want to personally thank all of our faithful supporters who have honored us by their kindness and their commitment by owning one of our premium packages. You are now empowered with the information to change and potentially save your life and the lives of those you love. With your support, we can continue to spread the message far and wide and help a lot of people. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed episode 3, where you saw how the sacred plant can be a miracle cure for children with autism and seizure disorders. It's tragic that this natural plant has been used for over 5,000 years to help people heal, but has been taken away from us in the last 80 years. With the current medical model, insurance companies will not pay for this medicine. This leaves most families stuck using traditional drugs that have devastating side effects. At the Sacred Plant, we want to make sure that all these children can have access to this medicine. That's why your support is so important. In today's episode, we'll examine how the Sacred Plant treats cancer. This episode continues the research and stories we shared on treating cancer in Season 1. We showed you research at Ohio State University Medical Center where cannabinoid treatment shrunk cancerous tumors in mice. You also met Jill, who has stage 4 cancer and successfully used cannabis to shrink her tumors. In today's episode, you'll hear how 4-time Grammy Award-winning singer and actress Olivia Newton-John is using cannabis as a part of her cancer treatment. You will also learn how Shannon Ageluni, who you met in episode 2, used the sacred plant to beat her breast cancer. She also gave it to her son Oliver, who has terminal cancer and a seizure disorder. And we'll take you back to Montana, where Mike and Callie Hyde are trying to save the life of their son Kashi, who is diagnosed with a rare brain tumor. Let's hear more from our Season 1 experts on how the sacred plant works against cancer.
To turn to the science, there are a set of really intriguing, interesting studies of looking at the effect of THC alone on, say, tumor growth and THC-rich herbal extract. And in some of the studies that have come out of Israel, I know of other studies that are in progress and not published yet by a group in Madrid, Spain, that have found in really thorough cancer models that THC-rich extract is more effective than THC alone, and in some of these studies is as effective for the therapy of choice, the standard of care in glioblastoma brain cancers, for example. That's really exciting. And there have been pieces of evidence like that that have come out for 20, 30 years. And it has been very frustrating to me as a scientist that those studies, when they come out, aren't front page news. The medical and healthcare establishment should celebrate these kinds of findings. Wow, you can get effects on brain cancers or breast cancers that are as good with a cannabis plant extract, oil, as you do with the synthetic pharmaceutical that is standard of care. We should be celebrating that. Lower cost to patients, lower toxicity to patients. And instead it gets stifled.
So I didn't really have pain until I had a reoccurrence. I had a reoccurrence last year in my sacrum, and I thought I had sciatic. I did have a sciatic. I don't know which was first, the chicken or the egg, but it turned out to be a lesion in my sacrum. And I have a wonderful husband who brewed me up some tinctures and things to try. And I don't like the psychoactive part of cannabis. I love it when it helps the pain and it helps me sleep. So he's managed to work out one of those for me. And so I only have to do a small amount, and it really helped the pain. I don't have pain now, but for about a year I was in pain, and he helped me a lot.
Good. I collected strains that I grow out here. I mean, we have a medical certificate here in California, so we're able to, grow multiple plants. So I grew multiple strains, really specific with the terpenes and cannabinoids that I knew were good, A, for cancer, and B, for pain. And then I made a formula from actually a combination of those flower, spun it off into a kief and made a tincture from that. And since she's not so much into the psychoactive part of it, she really wants the therapeutic benefit, did a cold extraction. So it's not been decarboxylated, so it's not psychoactive, but you do have high amounts of THC, which we're finding is better, in my experience anyway, tends to be better for pain, but it's non-psychoactive. And it just worked out, ultimately we hit a combination in a formula that just zeroed in 10 drops.
So I don't like taking prescription meds. I don't feel good on them, and I know they're not good for you. And so I was willing to try it and anything at that point, and it worked. But I did talk about it with the press, and that in Australia particularly, I wanted to talk about it because I wanted other people to have the benefit of the relief, because cancer patients in Australia at the moment, it's, even though they have passed the medical marijuana cannabis law, it's very difficult for them to get it. So people are suffering, and it's not right that people should be suffering and using kind of opiates and things that make them feel ill on top of it. So I thought there's no reason why I can't talk about it. It's legal here, and it helped me, so I want to be able to make that possible for everybody. And now I think there's major change happening in cannabis laws out there. Mm-hmm. Just from getting media attention. That's a wonderful thing about a celebrity, is that you can draw attention to things that maybe can make change. I'm no expert in it, he's the expert in it, but I have used it and it's helped me, and therefore I want to make that available for everyone. And CBD, for cancer, I'm taking CBD as well. So yeah, one of my friends just had a wonderful woman, had an incredibly terrible car accident, broke 30 bones in her back, punctured lung, vertebrae, clavicle. I mean, we didn't even know how she survived. Of course she was on opiates because she was in excruciating pain, but she weaned herself off opiates, I think in 5 days, with John's Formula 51. He blended together many cannabis strains that he has grown himself. They're organic, and she weaned herself. The doctors couldn't believe it, that she had weaned herself in like 5 days by taking a cannabis tincture.
34 broken bones, 2 fractures in the spine, 1 in the neck.
Unbelievable. It's really unbelievable.
She's a miracle story to start with.
The cannabis can help you with, if you're having chemotherapy, it can definitely help with nausea and pain. So it's a helpful thing. I mean, I have an oncologist that she's not giving me any treatments, but I check in with her and I talk to her about all these things. And I think they're actually fascinated because it's a new world for them of possibility for their patients too.
Yeah, they're reading the research, but it's not their role in their practice to do that yet. So they're reading the research, so it has to be patient driven, right? Everybody has to make their decision. And so when you have someone like Olivia that say, this is what I'm doing, they understand why, and so they're very accepting of it. And then they're just just checking the markers and following along and saying, wow, this is really good.
I think everyone should have the choice to use a plant, particularly if it's a sacred plant, and if there are wonderful benefits for it. I think you should have the opportunity to try it and find out for yourself. And I think it's wonderful that there is this educational tool that people can learn more about it and learn the myths and the debunking that needs to be done around the plant that's helped so many people.
Beating cancer is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. Does a sacred plant work against cancer? Truly, cancer is threatening the lives and livelihoods of those we love. Those shocking stats threaten us all. 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will get cancer during their lifetime. In this episode, we're going to show you how the sacred plant may be one of the most powerful tools to treat and even beat cancer. The sacred plant saved my father-in-law, but why didn't it save my beloved wife, Corinne? By doing this work, my hope is that the government will finally remove cannabis from a Schedule I category so the proper research can be conducted. Perhaps if the government had allowed cancer research to work on this plant 20 or 30 years ago, my wife, Corinne, might still be with us today. We will never fully know the number of lives that have been lost as a result of the corruption and greed which fueled the prohibition of cannabis. Yet, there are so many anecdotal stories about how cannabis works as an anti-cancer agent, and the scientific evidence is growing daily. In our first season, we showed you some of the cutting-edge research which is taking place in Israel. So I believe that scientists are moving closer to harnessing the power of cannabis to fight cancer.
The reason you can't say that it cures cancer is, there's a couple of reasons. One is that there's only been one double-blind human study that's been completed, and that was completed about a year ago, and it had to do with one kind of cancer. The double-blind studies in medicine are considered the gold standard. And if you just have anecdotal reports, you don't know whether or not the fact that the cancer went into remission was something that would have happened anyway without the cannabis, or whether the cannabis did that. So you have to have a credible number of people that you're comparing. You say 100 people that took it, 100 people that didn't take it, what happened? The study that was done, that was completed recently, was using, I believe it was using Nabiximol or Sativex. It was done by GW Pharmaceuticals, who makes that product. And they gave people 25 milligrams of THC and 25 milligrams of CBD in a whole plant alcohol extract. And these people had glioblastoma. That's the same cancer that Ted Kennedy died from and that John McCain is currently dying from. And what they found is that people who were treated with conventional treatment after the recurrence of their glioblastoma had a lifespan of 330 days. When you added cannabis to this, there was a 40% increase in their longevity to about 510 days. So that's encouraging. The problem with that study is the dosages that they used are probably only 1/10 to maybe 1/5 of what they should have used, or what a lot of the lay healers who use the so-called Rick Simpson oil or the fully extracted cannabis oil to treat cancer.
In September, I had watched, I think it was in September or October, I had watched the Sacred Plant series, season 1. And I remember seeing Dr. Sulak in that season 1, but I recognized him because during the process of Maine becoming a medical marijuana state, I had seen him on TV several times as an advocate. And so now, as I'm leaving Dana-Farber, I'm thinking, it's time for me to call Dr. Sulak. Well, one of the things when I started to see, I think it was at my second appointment with Dr. Sulak, he showed me a study where somebody with melanoma it was a clinical trial with melanoma, and they were using a cancer drug for the melanoma and CBD and THC. And so this beautiful graph that he showed me showed that if they just used the drug, here was the effect. If they just used CBD, THC, here was the effect. But if they combined those two things, here's what happened with the tumors, just fell away.
Another example is bladder cancer, which is, I think, the third or fourth most common type of cancer in men. There was a large study in California that showed that men who were using cannabis had about a 45% decreased rate of bladder cancer. In that same study, if the people that were tobacco smokers, the men that smoked tobacco, had about a 50% increased rate of bladder cancer. So there's a big difference there.
The other question is, what is the dosage for trying to kill cancer cells? Now, as I said, we can't say that cannabis cures cancer, but we can say that cannabis kills cancer cells in small animals and in tissue culture. And we don't know the answer to that question. If you talk to 3 or 4 different lay healers who are using Rick Simpson oil, you'll get 3 or 4 different suggestions. I do know that the study that was done by GW, to me, showed that 75 milligrams a day of THC and CBD is too low a dose. And if you talk to these lay healers, they use anywhere from 150 to 750 milligrams of THC and or CBD in order to try to kill the cancer cells and send it into remission. So clearly we need more research in order to be able to answer the question of A, does cannabis cure cancer? And B, if it does, what's the appropriate dose of THC and what's the appropriate dose of CBD?
Even I admin a cannabis glioblastoma group. And even still to this day, people are like, it has to be high THC. And it's like, it more than likely, yes, based on studies, we've seen that brain cancers respond well to THC, high THC. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's where they have to start, because not everybody can tolerate. I mean, there's people that can't even tolerate 5 milligrams of THC. You know, they have to start with CBD and slowly add in the THC. And so, you know, it really depends on how they respond. Some people respond really well to, you know, high, you know, a 1-to-1 ratio. Some people might stay stable at a high THC ratio. There's really no answer specifically to, you know, when people come to us and they say, well, what oil is going to cure my cancer? First of all, I can't say it's going to cure it. Second of all, I don't know what you're going to respond to. You start with something, and depending on how well you do and how your MRIs look, your dose could possibly change, and a lot of times it does. And then there's people that, for example, the patient that we have, that he's been on our oils for 5 years and he's only been on the same thing, and he's done really well.
For cancer patient, like Corinne's dad, he was 4 parts THC, 1 part CBD. You know, how important are formulations and ratios with different diseases?
Well, trying to combine both these questions into one, THC, I mean, adding THC is going to help more with pain. It's also going to definitely be more effective for cancer. I mean, from my reading, I think, and certainly with this clinical trial that's just been released, it was 1-to-1. So we're doing 1-to-1-to-1-to-1, and we'll be, I'm sure, adding, once they're available, THCV and CBDV, because they have substantial anti-tumor effects. And why not stay to 100, 150 milligrams, but divide it between all the molecules that have anti-cancer effects? I mean, why should some have it and some don't? So we've talked about CBD, the psychoactivity of THC, substantial anti-cancer benefit. Overall, I mean, it depends who you talk to, but there's large groups around the world that believe, and I do, 1-to-1 is the best for most, you know, solid malignancies.
In some cases, building tolerance may be useful. Cancer is one example. You featured that in your first season. A lot of people, in order to treat the cancer directly with cannabis, need to get very high levels in their blood and in their body tissues. And so in order to get those high levels, they actually purposely will build tolerance at the level of their brain, right? Because they don't want to be stoned out of their mind all day long. So they can gradually work up to a dose where, yes, they've built tolerance in their brain, but now the levels in their system are sufficient to help treat the cancer. That would be a desirable tolerance.
Shannon Aslooney is a breast cancer survivor and mother of Joey and Oliver. We met Joey in episode 3 and saw how the Sacred Plant allows him to learn and attend school. Shannon first learned about medical cannabis with Oliver, who has a rare terminal cancer and seizure disorder.
My 7-year-old Oliver has a really rare terminal cancer called histiocytosis. The oncologist finally calls, and she says, well, it's LCH. What's LCH? Oh, Langerhans cell histiocytosis. Well, what's that? It's a really rare cancer autoimmune hybrid, and he's gonna need chemo and all this other stuff. We need to talk to you. Come tomorrow. I said, well, then you better schedule it before they put that port in, because until I know what's going on with my kid, you're not cutting on my kid. Okay, absolutely. So that kind of started it. He fought really hard through all of that. He was 18 months old, had the port, had chemo, high doses of prednisone. All through all of this, cannabis never entered my brain. Our pediatrician had said, you know, it's the weirdest thing. He's the only kid I've ever seen get better or stronger on chemotherapy, because as the histiocytic lesions were shrinking, his brain was able to grow. He was able to develop and stuff like that. It wasn't until after he'd gone into remission, but the seizures kept coming, and they were just getting worse and getting worse. And he was now starting to have seizures where he would stop breathing for a few seconds. The cannabis came into it. I started doing research because he was on 3 different anti-epileptic meds, and he was either seizing or a zombie or post-ictal, or he wasn't my kid. He wasn't a kid. He was just a lump, or a floppy lump. He was, he just didn't do much. So, been doing the research kind of behind my husband's back, because again, we're a very straight and narrow family. We don't drink, we don't smoke, we don't party, that kind of thing. So I'm looking into this, and somebody on Ollie's Facebook page, he has a Facebook page called Praying for Ollie, and somebody on there sent me a link to the TED Talks YouTube video where Josh Stanley is talking about Charlotte's Web and all of that. And I watched it, and then I watched it again, because the first time I watched it, I cried my way through it. And then I watched it again, and then I watched it again. And then I started looking for more links. And the what it even brought cannabis to my mind was there's something called the Cash's Card Program. There was a little boy named Cash that used cannabis to cure his leukemia. And one of his family members reached out to me and sent Ollie a card. Just a little painted dinosaur on paper. And that kind of just stuck in my brain, And then I started looking into it more and more and more and more. We got the rec, and we got the oil, and I went to work that day. And on my way home, I picked up the rec, and I went over to the dispensary, and I picked up the oil. That was an adventure. Somebody who's never even bought beer, walking into a dispensary to buy medical marijuana that was an adventure, let me tell you. At 1 year, 8 months, and 12 days, by that point, he was completely off of all of his anti-epileptics. He was completely off of all of his pain meds. He was completely off of all of the anti-anxiety type meds that he was on. He was only taking meds for his diabetes insipidus and for the vitamin deficiencies that he had. He had a seizure again, and we weren't expecting it. After going almost 2 years without, I really wasn't expecting it. And that was our first indicator that he'd relapsed. And so this time around, going through the chemo and that stuff, we would never not do regular treatment. But this time around, we are co-treating with the cannabis. He takes a completely different strain, still has the same effect on him, although he still has seizures, and he is back on a low-dose anti-epileptic as well. However, the seizures are not violent. They're very mild. Even his oncologists are like, they told us he was terminal in August of 2016. They really didn't think there would be much more to do. It's now March of 2018. He's running around like a crazy kid. He's like, they'd still, this chemo usually knocks people on their backside. This treatment usually makes them very lethargic. This treatment usually makes them not want to do anything. This one makes him not eat. He's normal weight, normal height. For the most part, normal activity. He prefers quiet activities, but you get his cousins here, there's no stopping him. He's running around like a crazy person. I have to tell him, get off the top of the swing set. No, you can't jump off the tree. You know, he's a normal, almost 8-year-old boy in that aspect. How did it feel not having to worry about a seizure?
It felt like my cancer was dead. I used to have seizures before I took it. A lot, it's like 30 a day.
With this guy on his cannabis, he's more active. When he's off, he's always in pain. He's always in pain. There's no way to get rid of the pain completely. But with the cannabis, it sort of lessens that pain because his nerves and stuff aren't firing as much, and it really helps with him being able to walk around and actually interact with people rather than being in his room curled up on his bed, you know, just basically crying in pain. And it really sucks to see him like that. Like before cannabis, really I would forget about him in his room because I really wouldn't know he was there until Mom brought the cannabis home, and then he was more out here, and like he's actually able to have a semi-normal life with cannabis. Because if he didn't have cannabis, it'd be like a miserable, like, you know, inactive, non-social life.
That was October of 2014. November 14th of 2014, I was diagnosed with stage 3B breast cancer, triple positive. There was like, okay, we have to get you into the oncologist. You got to go see a surgeon. And, you know, things happen pretty fast when you've got an aggressive breast cancer. At that point, it'd gone from the size of like the tip of my pinky to the size of a ping pong ball. And I was thoroughly grateful. I had a friend who'd gone through chemo and through cancer with appendiceal cancer. She was able to recommend what she had taken, like chemo strength cannabis. So even before starting chemotherapy, before seeing my oncologist, I knew it was coming. I'd seen it with my baby. I'd seen it with my friend. I'd seen my father-in-law had gone through cancer all through all this time, and I knew. So I immediately started the cannabis, and I was taking a full gram once a day. That was how I started taking it. And it got me through 10 months of chemo. I was able to participate in Christmas with my kids, New Year's, Easter, my birthday. I went to a New Kids on the Block concert. It was fantastic. I would never have been able to go to a concert and deal being that deep in chemo, you know, that or treatment. I would have been too tired. I would have been too much in pain. I was bald. I just wanted to go and have fun. Wasn't high, it wasn't anything like that, but I was able to endure it. But you know, I enjoyed it. It gave me life where there would have been nothing but pain and laying in bed and doing nothing. So when it came down to it, through my mastectomies, I fought to be able to take it in the hospital.
Boys, before Mommy took cannabis, when I was on my chemo without the cannabis, did I come out of the bedroom?
Nope.
No. Did I get sick a lot?
Yeah, you mostly spend a lot of time in your bed.
And then when I took the cannabis, where did I spend a lot of time?
Yeah, here in the living room. I remember when we first got the couch, you go, okay, I'm sitting there. Like out of nowhere, that's just your spot.
When Mommy started losing the weight, Mommy started walking around more and doing stuff like that, right? Did I go to the park?
Yeah.
Did I go for walks around the block?
Yeah.
And that's because my feet didn't hurt anymore, right?
Yep.
But, you know, things like I could goof off with him. You know, I couldn't goof off with him before. Now I can goof off with him. I can beat Allie with paper towels. You know, I can be a mom to my kids. With Joseph, I can put my foot down and tell him, no, this has to happen. And he will take it to heart, understand, and learn from it. Oliver, is the biggest one. My relationship with Oliver, I was his food source. I was the thing that he held on to after seizures, and I was always the one there with the medical. That was it. There was no mom part of it. He didn't want me when he was snuggly and cuddly because I'm always there, and I was snuggling and cuddling him when he was in pain and sick and hurting and seizing and like postictal and all this stuff. So when he was feeling loving, he didn't want me. He wanted David. And so I just kind of get the mommy thrill when he willingly comes up and gives me a hug or willingly snuggles up beside me. I didn't get that before. I didn't get that from Joe. Getting a snuggle from Joe's harder still. But when he does it, it's awesome, you know? So I get to be a mom. I get to be a better friend to my friends, not only because I'm not in pain, we just have a more productive and loving relationship, family, you know, friends and family. Before we were all just our own little teacups spinning on our own little sticks. And now we're like one big giant gear, like clockworks. We're all different and we all spin in our own way, but we kind of mesh. And that's what cannabis has done.
Are you enjoying the show so far? Are you learning a lot of great information? Do you want to join our movement and support our mission to inform the world on the truth about cannabis? Then please consider supporting our cause by owning this complete series so you can watch it again and share it with a loved one now or in the future. Your support allows us to continue researching the sacred plant and spreading our findings for free. Also, a portion of each sale gets donated to charities that are helping people every day to find relief for their pain and to change the unjust laws so people everywhere can have access to the plant legally to heal. Simply click the banner below to join the movement and support our mission. I thank you in advance. It's people like you who are truly helping change the world.
The doctors had no answers, so Mike found his own. Relief in the form of a controversial oil, cannabis, illegal for you and I to possess, and something Cashy's doctors wouldn't even discuss. Mike got authorization to give Cashy the oil, and without telling them why, he told the doctors to wean Cashy off the nausea cocktail. Inserted through Cashy's feeding tube, a tiny amount of oil replaced all those drugs. The result, Mike says, was almost immediate.
You're watching a kid that hasn't had the will to eat in 4 months, 5 months, actually take a bite of something. He hadn't eaten a thing in 40 days, and it was really incredible just to watch him take a bite of a piece of cheese, you know. It's showing that he wants to live.
There you go. Yeah, Cashy!
Cashy did his last round of high-dose chemo with no anti-nausea drugs. Mike says the doctors told him they were amazed. Mike never told them why.
I wanted to tell him, hey, he's on cannabis oil, but I was afraid they would take it away from him.
Doctors are concerned about federal law and company policies, but Mike Hyde doesn't care about the controversy or about the political battle over this drug. He cares that his son survived and is convinced not only did the cannabis oil make Cashy feel better, it prevented long-term damage to his organs. For Mike, the living proof is in this vibrant 2-year-old boy.
Yeah, it's very controversial, it's very scary, but there's nothing more scary than about losing your child.
A week after we did this interview, Cashy was back in Salt Lake for scans, finding out he's cancer-free. He's back home in Missoula, back with his family, back to teasing his big brother Colty. Cashy will spend his 3rd birthday like every kid should, with the fight of his life behind him.
So Mike and Callie said, oh my gosh, I guess we need to continue this as regular medicine. Again, they said, goodness gracious, this is something we can't stop. So that's when we met Cashy and Mike and Callie and Colton. Colton's their eldest son. And so we spent a lot of time with them. You know, they'd come up, spend the week with us up at our place, and we would go do things with them. And Corinne and I had gone through this with her dad, Stan, and so we had seen the benefits of medical cannabis and how it is a cancer fighter, a cancer killer. And so we had a success story with Stan. We're witnessing a success story with this little boy, Kashi. And so, you know, we did a lot with the Hydes, and not only did a lot of fun things together, but we, Corinne and I are on their board and just helping them, you know, and they have a lot of, because they're in the news, you know, they had a lot of people coming at them. And he said, Johnny, you know, help me here. And so I'd, you know, read their press releases, correct their, you know, correct spelling errors, see their trifolds, and if someone would contact him, he said, talk to John. And so I was kind of being a protective brother, because we've seen a lot of people prey on, weak is not the word, but prey on someone that's going through, you know, family going through stuff like this.
In that year, you know, we learned a lot as parents. We learned a lot as individuals, and we learned that if your parental instinct and intuition is telling you to ask questions or think outside of the box, then that's what you do. You do whatever it takes. You know, you don't just stop at one little obstacle and just say, okay, fine, this doctor with this college degree says he has mono, so we'll just let him die. This doctor said that this is the protocol for his cancer, so we're just gonna let him die. No, like, that's not what we did, and we overcame these obstacles as a family, and that's when we were left with this decision. Do you come home and just act like nothing happened? We're cancer-free now. Like, you know, Cash, when we walked out of the hospital in January of 2011, Cash was cancer-free. He was a Christmas miracle. He was the boy of steel we'd won. I was confident I was gonna go to jail when I told the story, and my grandpa and my grandma and my dad, they all begged us not to say a word. They were like, guys, don't say anything. Like, you guys won, just go home and just forget about all this. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And that's when we made the decision to tell Cash's story to KPAX, because the local news station in Missoula, they've been following Cash's journey the whole time, because not a lot of kids in Missoula, Montana have brain tumors. And so the whole town was rooting for Cash. They were all watching him. So when we came home and the news station came up to our house and we're sitting there on the couch, and I was like, yeah, Cash is a medical cannabis patient. His story went viral. It went around the world. And we sat there at the house night after night just thinking, okay, when are the cops coming? When are the cops coming? And his story got so big and the controversy got so huge, and the question of, well, is it okay to give kids cannabis oil if they're dying? And all of a sudden the answer overwhelmingly across the whole world was yes. Instantly, overnight, it was okay. Before that, you couldn't mention kids and cannabis at all. And all of a sudden, because of Cash and his story, it was okay. And the whole world was watching. And I think a lot of people were waiting to see when I was gonna get arrested and Callie was gonna end up in the clink.
So, June, he was doing extremely well. Then the laws changed in Montana about medical cannabis, and they didn't have access anymore. And so they were trying to, you know, do everything they possibly could to get it.
So we came back from fighting cancer to fighting for access so Cash could have medicine. And in June of 2011, a week before our Make-A-Wish trip to go to Disney World with Cash, the state shut down all the medical dispensaries. They made everybody destroy every plant, every bit of medicine. Every patient card was now void, and that was it for medical cannabis. We were okay with it at the time because we were cancer-free. We were like, well, we told Cash's story, and he's cancer-free right now, so I guess if we can't grow his medicine right now, that's okay. that was the first time we shut down growing as a family. We're like, okay, well, let's just focus on the family then. And that was July 1st, 2011, and we were cancer free. We floated the river. We just really just embraced life at that moment and just went and just lived. And it got close to his 3-month checkup in October. We drove to Salt Lake City for his scans, and they told us that his tumor was back. And that was the second time in my life where I felt like the biggest loser out there, because I was afraid to grow illegally. And so now my son's in a position where his cancer's back and I can't help him. I'm back where I was a year ago with no access to medicine. And I looked at Callie and I told her, I go, never again. Never again will I ever not grow cannabis. Never again will anyone tell me I can't take care of my family. Never again will I make a decision based off of fear of my own well-being that could affect so many people. Because the reality of it was not only could I not help Cash, I couldn't help all the other families that were asking for help too. And that's when our second journey of looking for medicine came to play. And the state of Montana at the time, they had started reissuing medical cannabis cards, and I didn't want to participate in their program anymore. I wasn't, no one can tell me how or when I can take care of my loved ones at all, period. And that was the decision I made. Basically, Callie did the ground level at the house. She was the one working on dosages with the medicine we could get. I was networking with lab workers, lab technicians, oil makers, growers all over the country, really. And at the same time, we were up against this huge obstacle of everybody wants to help, but they're afraid to help because of the way the laws are all set up in all these individual states. And that's when we hit this pivotal point as parents of doing whatever it takes. And so I was basically driving from California to Colorado to Washington, and we were looking for medicine for Cash. And at the same time, we knew his cancer was back and we had a window to work with. And what's unfortunate about the way the medical system is right now is the way they look at fighting cancer is by poisoning the body. And if you're not poisoning the body, then you're not fighting cancer. And so that being said, we had to keep pushing off chemo dates and radiation dates for him on a second battle, getting a second opinion is how we had to put it. Like we're getting a second opinion from John Hopkins. We're getting a different opinion from over here, and we were. And that bought us time. And we kept scanning him, and his tumor wasn't growing. However, they were really adamant that we needed to radiate him. And you have doctors telling you he's gonna die if we don't do radiation. He's going to die. We need to radiate him right now. And I kept saying, well, is his tumor growing? And we kept not getting the answers we were wanting back from the doctors about the tumor size. They wouldn't tell us how big it actually was and if it was metastasizing from the date when they found that it was back the second time or not, because they don't want to work with you if you're not doing their game. And it's very, very heartbreaking, because if they would participate a little bit with parents that are doing their best to do a natural protocol, you would have a better handle on what's really going on with the patient. And at the same time, we hit all of our deadlines, and we were forced into doing radiation for the second time, and I couldn't find enough oil for Cash. 2011, it was like the day after Thanksgiving, we loaded up the family again, and we headed to Loma Linda, California to start proton brain radiation with Cash. And there was this grower by the name of Lawrence Ringo, and now we're on our way to California, and I was like, it was my last chance to find some medicine for him, because there was no medicine in Montana. No one was growing. We went from like 4,000 caregivers to none overnight. And I called Lawrence Ringo up and I said, look, Cash's cancer is back and we're getting forced into doing radiation. I can't find enough medicine to hold off radiation any longer. Can you please help him? And Lawrence was like, Cash's cancer is back. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, I'll do whatever it takes, Mike. He's like, you drive to Northern California and I'll give you any medicine you need. I'll give you everything I have. And I heard that so many times by different people, and I would get there and it wouldn't be what they said it was. And it was like a lost hope, So even though he told me this, we're en route. We're literally like in Las Vegas area when I'm talking to him, which is a long ways from Northern California. We're talking like 14 hours. And we have to start radiation in the morning. I was so torn because I just wanted to not put him through radiation. I wanted to just drive to Northern California with Cash and get this oil and just go for it there. And at the same time, Callie wanted us to listen to the doctors because they're doctors. And we, even though you want to trust your instinct, at the same time you want to trust doctors. They're smart. You want to believe they care about your kid. You want to believe that they're right. And so it's one of those moments where you're damned if you're right and you're damned if you're wrong, and it's your kid's life on the line. And so that morning we started radiation, and it was instant flashback to the year before. I mean, the minute they started doing the proton radiation, Cash got sick, and he got sick quick, and he reverted backwards so fast it was a nightmare. And so we did the first week of radiation, and every day we would bring him from the Ronald McDonald House was right across the street from the pediatric hospital. We'd go in there, they'd sedate him, they'd radiate him, we'd get him back. It'd be about 10 o'clock in the morning, and we'd go back to the Ronald McDonald House, and Cash would just lay there in bed throwing up all day. And so it was that Friday, after the first week of radiation, I told Callie, we got to get up to Northern California and meet this Ringo guy and see what he has. So we took a chance. We loaded up Colton and Cash in the car Friday afternoon, the minute he was done with radiation, and we took off to Northern California. We met him in a parking lot, and he was the most genuine, real person I had met up to this point in time in the industry. I'd met a lot of flakes and a lot of people that were profiteering and a lot of people that were egotistical and it's this way or my way or the highway type attitude. And when I met Ringo, he was instantly like an old soul, a mentor, and he looked at me, and he had 4 syringes of 40 cc syringe. I mean, these were the big fat syringes of oil. One was pure CBD, it was his Harlessu, and another one was a blend, and then the other 2 were high THC oils. And he looked at me and he said, Mike, I want to apologize to you. He goes, when you called me in the summer and you asked me for medicine, he's like, I was afraid that you were being watched and that I was going to get in trouble if I helped you out. And he goes, when you called me last week and you told me that Cash's cancer is back, I felt like the biggest scaredy cat loser because I could have helped you guys 4 months ago and maybe it wouldn't be where it is right now. And he goes, I want to promise you that I will never be afraid of the government. I'll never be afraid of being in trouble again. And he's like, I made this medicine. He goes, I grew it under the sun. I made it. It's organic, and I made it with love, and I want you to have it all for free for Cash. And if you put a dollar value on the bag of oil he gave us to today's standards, $10,000, $15,000 probably that he gave us. And from that point forward, me and Ringo were like brothers. So we get back to the hospital or Ronald McDonald House. We wake up that first morning and we gave Cash a little bit of the THC oil, brought him in for his radiation. We checked him out. He wasn't throwing up. We gave him some CBD oil after that for the daytime. He didn't throw up all day long. wanted to go to the park. He wanted to go see a movie. So literally every day after that first week of radiation, we went and thrived through California while he was battling radiation. All the other kids were inpatient in the hospital, weren't allowed to leave their room at the Ronald McDonald House. And we were playing, we were going places, we were doing things. And it was all because Lawrence Ringo gave Cash this medicine. He gave us this gift that you couldn't replace. Like, he gave Cash life. And even though the radiation was very hard on him, it brought him all the way back to ground zero, he was still able to enjoy himself. And we were still able to get Colton out and do stuff for that battle. And for that, I'm forever grateful to Lawrence Ringo. He did something for Cash that nobody else could do. I couldn't even do it for him at that point in time. It was February of 2012 that we got released from Loma Linda Hospital, and we brought this frail little boy back to Montana to rebuild him. And we did a really good job at getting some weight back on him and getting him back up to where we were hoping was going to be a normal summer for the Hyde family. And we went in for his 3-month check-in.
He was cancer-free in May.
May we were cancer-free.
And then in June he started having symptoms.
Yeah, he just started being sick again.
He kept complaining of pain in his stomach, like screaming and holding his stomach. So we were worried that maybe something spread to his abdomen. And so we did scans, we did CT scans, we did, so then finally they were like, well, let's just do another MRI of his brain in July. So it was the end of July.
We did the MRI, and that's when they told us that his tumor was back and it was already over 2.5 centimeters again. And that the reality of it was we've already done high-dose chemo, so you can't do high-dose chemo.
He had max amount of radiation for life.
So no more radiation wasn't an option, and that basically there was a couple alternative aggressive treatments that might buy him a month or two, but that he was going to pass away. And Cash looked at us and he asked us for no more pokes. And that's when we made the decision as a family that we would do our final battle at home with him. And it was so hard because we just wanted to make sure he was okay. And the medical profession didn't want to work with us. They didn't want to scan him. They didn't want to test his blood. You're either in or you're out. And so as parents, we felt so alone. And we just wanted to trust that things were going to happen the way they were supposed to. And that's when we just hunkered down for our final battle at home with him as a family. And for the last 2.5 years, we've been living out of gym bags, hotels, Ronald McDonald houses, all over. And it was the first time that we could just breathe at home in Montana. Because as a family in Montana, you can't fight cancer in Montana. You have to leave. You have to go out of state. And so it was the first time that we were just like, okay, we're just going to dig in here with Cash. And we just made the most out of every day with him. And his last day alive, we were standing right up here with John and Corinne Malanka. And we went to the hot springs up at Lost Trail that evening. And then we had just a beautiful last day right here in Montana. And then in the morning we drove home, and Cash was just getting sicker and sicker. And we decided to make that phone call to our friends and family to let them know that Cash wasn't doing good and that they should probably get up to our house. And so throughout the course of that day, all of our friends and family came up to our house, and we just held Cash and told him that we loved him. He fed himself his last meal. He wanted He wanted a bowl of Cheerios. More specifically, he wanted a bag of Cheerios with this milk in it. And he insisted on feeding himself like a big kid. And we sat there and we watched movies, and as we got closer to the evening, he wanted a bath. We gave him a bath. And then we just held him on the couch and we told him that we loved him. And I was holding him and I felt him take his last breath. And I looked up to tell everybody there that he was gone, and I felt Cash explode out of me across the whole entire universe. And at that moment, I knew that he was gone from this earth. And it was the hardest thing to do. And as I look back on it, I wouldn't change his final battle. I wouldn't change the way we address cancer with love and positive thinking and energy, fighting cancer with smiles. I wouldn't change any of that. And in that final moment, Callie and I gave him peace. And
he never had another poke.
He didn't have any more pokes. He died at home. He died with his dignity.
No hospice.
I look back on all of his battles where we almost lost him in the ERs and the ICUs and all of this. And I feel like we gave him that final moment of peace as a family at home in Montana. And for some reason, Cash's journey was huge. It was fast. It was only 4.5 years. His impact, I can't even put it into words, the impact that he had on this earth, on so many people. Like, we'll get emails from people that are like, Cashy changed my life. Cashy changed the way that I look at my kids before I put them to bed. Cashy changed the way that I'm a dad or how I'm a mom. And for all that, I'm thankful to Cash. I'm thankful that I got to be his dad. I'm thankful that I got to embrace that journey with him. And I'm thankful that he gave us his legacy to continue with the Cash Hyde Foundation and all the families that we've helped as a community, as a foundation. And for that, Cash Michael Hyde is my hero. And I'm just thankful for the time we had with him.
To feel that pain, what a father must go through, to losing his child after fighting that battle was so hard. And I asked Mike, I said, I'll turn around. He said, no, he can't do anything right now anyway. And told Corinne, and it was just, it was a tough. It was a tough night. It was a tough night, but we look back now and, what an honor it was to spend Cashy's last night with him. It was a total honor to have Cashy's last night with us at our place in Montana. And, but that family is so near and dear to Corinne and I, but they're so strong. A lot of families break up and after a loss of a child, and they've gotten stronger. They've gotten stronger. Dedicate this tree to my beautiful wife, Corinne Malanka, and your beautiful son, Cash Michael Hyde. They brought so much joy into our lives. They inspired us, loved us. They dedicated their lives to helping others. And this world was a better place with them in it.
Love you, Cashy and Corinne.
I cannot wait to be reunited with you. I know we're stuck here for a while.
I'm going to be here a minute.
But Love you. So keep an eye on this tree, okay?
Yeah, we got our eyes on it.
Thank you for joining us for episode 4 of Treating Cancer Part 2. I hope you were moved by these emotional stories of people using the sacred plant to heal cancer. Coming up in episode 5, accessing the sacred plant, the unjust laws, and how to navigate them. We examine the changing landscapes of medicinal cannabis regulations all over the United States. We travel from Maine to Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maryland, and Florida, and out to my home state of California. We'll examine what the growing adult market means for medical patients. We follow the seed to sale journey of cannabis from the growing facilities to the dispensaries as well as the wellness centers. You'll see how the raw plant is turned into medicinal oils and tinctures and how the regulations differ from state to state. We'll meet activists who are winning the fight to get everyone legal access to cannabis. Episode 5 is going to be a pivotal one, so make sure you don't miss it. I thank you again for joining us, and a special thank you to those who generously supported our mission and spread this message far and wide. God bless you and your loved ones. I invite you to join our movement, support our mission, and help us save lives. We're a small company that's committed to the truth and to helping humanity. Since we don't have the unlimited resources that Big Pharma has, we need to work together to educate and empower more people about the healing benefits of the sacred plant. When you support our mission by owning this complete series today, you allow us to continue to research, interview, expose, and share this knowledge with the world for free, just like we're doing right now. If you learned something, been inspired, want to watch it again, share it with a loved one, or just love how it feels to support a good cause, consider owning the Sacred Plant Healing Secrets Examined today. Simply click the banner below to join the movement and to support our mission. I thank you in advance. It's people like you who are truly helping change the world.